optimism thing like you did with
Oh,
us
good.
last week.
Yes.
And then touch on some of the stuff we talked about yesterday. But this is just very casual,
Wonderful.
Right? And I put these together because I didn't feel like we were connecting in heart space. We were all being logistical and what, getting to learn what we needed to do to survive business wise. And it's interesting with how Zooms work. I feel like we have to put more energy out. Maybe not be bigger. I'm never animated, but put more energy out so the other person can feel it. But then also sitting all freaking day. I have a stand-up desk at the office. I don't at home. So it's got to remind ourselves to get up and move.
Yeah.
And I've told a lot of people what you taught me a couple years ago, which is I deserve recess. So I take 2 recesses a day.
Whoops, there goes air conditioning came on, and you see there my wall goes away. One thing, Ashley, I just want to point out, I have a stand-up desk at home, and when Chris came to office at the house, he actually took my desk, and he's a little bit needier and needs things to be more in line. I always tell the kids that you can throw them off if you just move something in the refrigerator from the top shelf to the middle shelf, and then he freaks out and can't find it. So I sort of knew he needed that, and I thought about what I was going to do for me. And I actually ordered something, and I'll post it on Facebook, but it's a projector cart, and it functions great if you record or on podcasts and shoot video and things, because it's got one tray that's kind of low that I keep a computer on, and then it's got a higher one that you can put stuff on, and it rolls around. And I have a boom with the mic and stuff for doing podcasts and everything on it. And so I really stand up a lot, and I coach from there. And now I think it was $80. And so so I'll post that, and so that you can, but I'm always looking for things that it's not the use they describe, but I need it anyway. And so that's what that was. I was like, I need something tall so I can put things on to record, and a mic. And so that's been very helpful.
I'd love that. I brought in a 6-foot folding camping table as my desk.
Yes. Yeah, you and Howard Stern, I think. Howard Stern has a camping desk also, a camping desk table. So Ashley, tell me what you want to start from. What do you think?
Really, if you, I think, okay, we're at 24. This probably go up above 30 people, but I think for the most part, most people here know you, and maybe not. Let me see. And I think you know some of the people who are here.
Yes, and it's wonderful to see.
Hi, Nina.
Either gorgeous, hello, great, beautiful faces in your professional photos, or the video of you all sitting. So hi Terry, I'm Nina Rowan Heller, and I'll give you a little bit about my history to understand how I ended up being with KW people. I started out as Gary Keller's personal trainer 25 years ago. And so at that time, Keller Williams had less than 5,000 agents. And we spent time working out, and as in Gary's form, he had a whiteboard, and we worked out in his garage at that time, before he built his house that he has now. And he would constantly stop his workouts and have to go write things on the board. And it taught me a lot of things. And actually, I worked with him for years, 3 days a week in the morning. It taught me a lot about how needing to have that place where when things pop into your mind, it's great to put them down somewhere and whiteboard them. And out of that, we have whiteboards in our homes, in the kids' rooms, and all over, so that everybody has the opportunity to do that. So from working with Gary, then I was given as a gift to mow. And I would tell people, for oftentimes being someone's gift, I always caution when someone says, I want you to come work with my spouse. I always say, I don't think you want to give me as a gift unless someone asks for me as a gift. But Mo actually didn't ask and was delighted. And so she's been a client of mine for many, many years. And through the years, I've worked with all of KW leadership in one way, shape, or form. I taught health stuff. I used to teach the health part of Quantum Leap before Quantum Leap developed and then became the one thing. And so I've been along for the ride for a long time. And then that gave me the gift of meeting my husband. And I was on a stage at a masterminds and speaking. And I remember I had a chart and had states that were showing obesity trends. And I was up on stage, and it was one of those, Gary said, I want you to tell people, wake up, pay attention kind of talk. So it wasn't the most exciting, positive talk, but he and Chris were backstage together, and Chris told him, oh, she's doing really good. And he said, you know what, you should meet her. You guys should connect. And so I ran off stage, and Chris, in his very quiet way, said, hey, great job. And I said, thanks. And I ran off. And so I missed it. So then we were recruit selected between Gary and Diana Kokoska, basically, because then Diana taught at some point. And so that's how that came to be. So out of many years of working with real estate agents, those are not my only clients. I've worked with professional athletes, actors, musicians, all varieties of people, single moms, people with very, very busy lives. But the thing that always comes forth, and what I've learned for all these years of coaching and teaching and training, is that becoming our most positive, amazing selves is what wins everything. So that's how I coach from, and it's from the platform of health, but it's business, health, lifestyle management, all of that. So.
And last week, I had forgotten, I don't know, I have pretty good steel trap memory, and I don't know how I forgot, but I forgot your actual clinical training until you brought it up in the whole reframing conversation, which it made so much sense to me, because you get in there through the physical, and it's because it's what your training has been.
Yeah, so I was in mental health originally, and I was a family therapist, and I wanted to work with kids, and I thought that was really the best way to have interventions, and I love that. But my last gig was doing divorce custody cases, and it was horrible. And I
not enough reframing in the world.
Yeah, and I said, I don't know how I want to do this. And I always was involved in health, in physical health. And so then I sort of combined it. And the thing to me, I have my own health issues. I've got a really interesting spine, doesn't go straight up and down. And so I've been in pain a lot in my life, and that helped me understand and have empathy for people in pain. And working out and exercising and eating right keeps my spine in a good place and happy. And so now that I'm 55 next month, and
when's your birthday, Nina?
The 9th of June. Yes. So, and I am a big believer in, there's no reason that you can't be in better shape next year than you were this year. It's total attitude. And if there's anything, Mo Anderson has in her office, in her house here in Austin, attitude is everything, and it's on the wall. And I'm a firm believer, attitude is everything. And so it just makes a huge difference about your health, because a lot of the programming that we've gotten over the years is like aging means that you are getting less healthy. And I think the balance is wisdom, is because I believe with every year you're on the planet, you are aging and you're gaining so much wisdom that your ability to be more productive in your health is greater. And so there's no reason that you can't be. There's some amazing people. There's a woman, and I forget her name, that's terrible. that's 80 years old that started bodybuilding like at 76 and got off all her medications. And her last name's Franklin. If you YouTube senior woman bodybuilder, and she changed her entire life, got off all medications and all that kind of stuff. And those are not miracles, those are realities. And it sort of leads to what Ashley wanted me to talk about was optimism. The only reason that you accomplish things is by being optimistic. You don't accomplish things by being pessimistic. You never meet an Olympic athlete that is pessimistic. And, you know, it's interesting because there's optimism and pessimism. And then there's, if you're a realist or an idealist, and those are not, so I think of idealist is on one end and realist is on the other, and optimism and pessimism, same thing. In order to accomplish things that nobody's ever accomplished before, you can't be all realist. You have to be a little bit of an idealist. The person who broke the 4-minute mile, once he did, everybody went, okay, that's real. So all the realist people went, I can do that too. But you're never the first to do anything if you're a realist. You have to be an optimist. Just like the Free Solo guy, if you guys haven't seen that documentary, mind-blowing. And that documentary was a teaching of, I think, about great documentaries, because I watch a lot of documentaries, and what they really showed was what his mind was and all the people around him. The camera guys were more concerned about being there to witness the failure than he was in failing. He was going for it, and that's what it was. And the camera people were really concerned about their witnessing a failure. So you really see, even on that line, and those guys are up there hanging on the wall next to him doing stuff, they still had too much realist in them and were pessimistic, and yet they agreed to go along for the ride, and then made a great film. But so I think there is a place for realist, but I think being optimistic is where you create the options, and then you can evaluate them with your realism versus idealism. And that's what Ashley was on a call that I did last, I guess, Tuesday was optimism, or the week before was optimism.
Right.
And what I was explaining there is our brains are always looking for solutions. Not everybody is curious, but our brains are always looking for solutions. And when we are presented with a problem, if you're an optimist, what that means is it allows your open mind to find more solutions, to be more creative. If you're pessimist, you are affirming the reasons why something doesn't work. And so you are going to the place of not moving forward. You're going to the place of how to be in that moment. And so I think choosing optimism is one of the things that creates lots and lots of solutions, many more options. And so it feels better, which also creates more energy to continue to create more options.
Will you speak to what happens on the cellular level also, as far as the nutrients?
So it's fascinating. Maybe 20 years ago, Baylor University ended up with this amazing microscope that they didn't know was going to be able to do this, but basically it could see a cell while we're thinking. It could see what the cell was doing while we were thinking. And this doctor that I worked with, Dr. Cooey, who used to do all the stuff for recommended daily allowances and all that stuff. And he said, by looking at the cells, they could determine that we are thinking positive thoughts that the cells behaved a certain way. And they could see them. And what they saw them do is they saw a cell open to receive nutrients and release toxins. And when you were thinking negative, reading negative words, hearing harsh things, that the cell would stay closed. And then it wouldn't receive nutrients and it wouldn't release toxins. So basically the cell would just stay the way it was and not grow, change, develop, and get the nutrients and release the stuff that is not serving it. And so there are lots of sciences about this. And what they even learned at Baylor University is prayer impacted that when people prayed, that happened. And then there are people like Greg Braden, who is this really cool new agey guy, but also lives in this huge world of science. And I went to Tibet with him, and he is amazing because he comes up with all the science behind prayer and that connection. So they've done studies that people praying in a group, 5 people praying in California to change something that happens in New York, that they saw a direct impact between those 5 people connecting and praying. And the more people they added, the more significant impact. So all of these things that 20 years ago, I would say I bridged from conventional to unconventional, there's science behind it. It just is amazing, sounds really cool. And oftentimes people think it's new agey. It's really just science. So whenever I'm working with somebody to help them with mindset, supplements, nutrition, and all of these kinds of things, and I'm talking about meditate every morning, close your mind off, stop thinking, meditate, it changes things. I can give them all the research about it and then they'll do that. But what really changes things is when you start to actually meditate and you go, I can actually control what's going on in my mind. And what that does, to go back to optimism and pessimism, is if you're being programmed, if people are sending you a bunch of negative information, when you meditate, you actually have the ability to slow all that down and decide, do I take that in or not? When we don't meditate, a lot of times we become very passive and we just receive a ton of programming. And we don't even realize that we're doing that. And so we become afraid and we don't even know why we're afraid. And we become concerned or anxious. Anxiety, depression, all of those things are huge right now, much bigger than we ever thought they would be in the future. And I think part of that has to do with that we are doing so many things that we aren't actively understanding what we're being programmed by. And just by taking 20 minutes a day to meditate or 10 minutes a day to meditate, you can control how you receive all of that information through the news, music, radio, iTunes, all that kind of stuff. I say music because lyrics make a difference. I don't know if anybody listens to Andrea Bocelli, but if you want to feel powerful, put his music on. There is a completely different vibration to a lot of the music that he sings versus music you just enjoy and love. And so he's like the game changer. And if anybody's seen him in person, you can see him. I saw him, Chris and I saw him at Madison Square Gardens, and everybody in the audience was connected, and you could feel it because it's that kind of power that happens.
It is a frequency. You definitely feel it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer, and I know you had Mark on here and talk about, Mark and I go on and on about map of consciousness. And you will hear me say that all the time, that people are at different vibrations and different levels. Yeah. And I like to use, for clients that might be on this call that I work with, everybody gets a map of consciousness and we talk about it. We talk about when people are talking to you or you're working with people.
I'm gonna move my camera. I do this. So when I'm coaching, can you see that?
It's your map of consciousness
all the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
And something very simple, if you all aren't familiar with the map of consciousness, something very similar to understand is that if people are frustrated, angry, upset, That's a certain level, certain vibration, okay? And when you are at that level, oftentimes for comfort, what you want is you want to bring other people down to that level. And not consciously even necessarily, but you know, like if you're at a birthday party and everybody's having a great time and someone walks in and says, oh my gosh, I just had to pay a bunch of money in taxes. And then everyone's like, hush, you just brought the whole room down. And conversely, if you walked into a funeral and you were like, I just listened to the best jam in my car, people are like, whoa, this is where we're at. You can feel where those levels are. People unconsciously are constantly trying to bring around the familiar. So when you feel bad, oftentimes if you don't have the awareness of it, you want other people to join you. And not, again, not
consciously
horrible, everybody needs to be there, but you find yourself telling everybody about it so that they can join you. And then everybody, and what it is it makes you feel more comfortable. So if you have awareness about this, when you feel that vibration being lower, you can ask somebody to join you to a higher vibration, because oftentimes it only needs a yes in there to say, would you like me to share something today that really changed my day when I was having a tough day? And people say yes, because I always believe you need to ask for permission, because when you have permission, the door opens for information. I love to tell people what to do. Nobody loves being told what to do. You have to ask, and then they say, okay, I'm open. And so out of that, when you do that, you can ask people, and when they are wanting to join you, they can go up in a vibration. Without their permission, or not saying that people are really working on that, people can't go up, but everybody can go down. Everybody can go down. So in this time, I often listen to the news and I think, okay, where are we coming from on the map of consciousness? And Ashley, what do you think most news programs are coming and speaking from?
Fear controls. So easiest way to control the population.
Low vibration.
Yep.
So I love that the guy who did The Office, who came out with some good news during this time. I think there are tons of opportunities during this
I'm going to pause just for a second, because you said something. I'm only aware of it because yesterday's call, but you said when I listen to the news, because you don't watch it.
I don't watch the news. And people, you know, I argue with my family about this, and they're like, you don't watch the news. I haven't watched the news in 30 something years. I only listen to the news.
Will you tell us why? Because I think it's poignant on why.
So you can control the information flow if you have one way it's coming in, by reading it or listening to it. If you are watching the news and listening to it, what happens is you can't control. And this is why you will be traumatized. They will flash a photo or a video or something up, and it controls what you're thinking about what you heard. So they're guiding you to a thought. And I learned a long time ago, I don't like to have anybody control me. I don't want to be addicted to substance. I don't want people telling me what to do. And a lot of people feel this on different levels, but in the news, I just look at it as programming. If I read it, I can choose. I can choose to say, that's really interesting. Let me do some more research about that. What can I find out about that? If you're watching the news, it is bombarding you with too much for you to control. And what's interesting, they've done studies and they've found when people watch the news that they will repeat things that they've been programmed about later, and they won't even remember that they were told those things. But that's how you start hearing those little catchphrases and things that are happening, because they are programming it into you. Whereas if you read, people actually don't get programmed as much. So you don't have to be uninformed. You just want to only choose to either listen or read, because
don't make it so immersive.
Yeah,
that's the word.
And again, the studies, when we started studying children watching television, and I did research as an undergrad, and we would watch, and what they would see is that kids went into a almost meditative state between them and the television. And how you can test this is because eye movement stops. They actually are just engaged. And if you come in, they actually have a hard time seeing you. So the connection between the television and the person is super, super strong. So actively watching programs, not just the news, any program, actively watching the program to really put yourself in the choice position so that you are choosing, do I really want to believe that I need to carry a Gucci bag and drive a fast car, or is this just something that I am watching people do this? And because it's a lot of programming.
Yeah.
What else, Ashley, about optimism, when we were talking about that, would be helpful for people?
I think because of everybody going through just a different reality right now, your reframing piece also was really powerful.
So reframing was a skill, and lots of people. First, let me just preface this. I'm amazed at the number of business teachings that really come directly from psychology, but they put a spin on it in order to make it a sales pitch or a focused business planning, whatever. But it's all based in psychology. And so reframing is something that as a therapist, you are taught in order to work with a client that's expressing just a bunch of things that they're having problems with. And so anything that happens to someone is what they feel like they're a victim of. If you can reframe it where they can be in control, or reframe it so that you can see a positive outcome. So the reframing example that I gave to Ashley in the group, I think is just one of the more helpful stories that I ever had, because I had this kid, and I'll be quick, but this child who ran away from home, and I was working at a runaway shelter, and she ran away from home. She was 9 years old. She was very young for a runaway. And so I was assigned as her therapist, and we were working, trying to figure out what to do with her. And my first thought immediately was, well, Child Protective Services is going to have to come in and remove this child. She needs to go someplace else, because her story was horrific. And she had a very, very large mother who was physically and emotionally abusive, and she had scars and everything else. And this kid was brilliant, because she figured out a way to get to our shelter at 9 years old, which is kind of mind-blowing. That's like third grade. And so I thought for sure we'd be able to get Child Protective Services to get her out of there. And I talked to my clinical supervisor, and he said, Child Protective Services said she's going back home. And I said, you can't do that. And he said, no, that's what's happening. She's going back home. There aren't enough resources to work with children, and kids that they find have an adaptive skill, which was hers. She ran, she got out of it, that they said she is safer than other kids that are younger and don't have this. And I was like, that's horrible. And as a young therapist, my first thought is, I'm going to adopt this child and take her home. She's going to live with me. And based on that route, I would have 100 kids by the end of the year. So that wasn't going to be a good solution either. So he said, you have to think of solutions. You need to reframe this. And I'm like, there is no solution. And I really didn't think, because in my mind, you can't ever put a kid in that situation. And it was one of the best lessons I ever learned, because there are so many situations that we put people in or have to be in that are not your choice. Yep. And it happens anyway. And so he said, what are you going to do? And I'm like, there are no choices. He said, what are you going to do? And he kept asking, and I'm like, I don't know. He said, if she goes home, what does she need? And so I started thinking, I'm like, she needs somebody to intervene immediately before she gets hurt. And so we talked about it, processed it, and came up with giving her resource numbers, teaching her to call people, contact sheriffs, mental health deputies, APD, fire department. We had a whole list of things. If you're in the house and your mom is scary, then you lock yourself in and you call. If you are out of the house, you run to what neighbor. And we had all these things, and I gave her this little bitty list with all these numbers on it, and we talked strategy. So she went home, and in like 24 hours, I get a call. And this is before we had cell phones. I get a call, and it said, hey, your girl did some amazing stuff. And I said, what did she do? He said, well, her mom was going to beat her, and she locked her mom out of the house. And she called not one or two of those people. She called everybody that you gave her on that list. And everybody on the list showed up. Every single department was sitting in front of this house, and here's this big woman screaming and yelling, and she was so angry. Everybody got to see her aggression, and she was screaming and yelling that she was going to kill this kid, and she was aggressive and abusive with all the authorities, and they removed her. So I never could have thought that plan would have worked for that outcome. But I said, all right, here's the situation. Now, how do I reframe this so that there is a solution? And so again, that's in optimism. You have to get to be creative. Something that I've been enjoying, you know, adapting new behaviors. We have this time frame while we are in this quarantining, shelter in place, all that stuff. And we say, okay, we have another week or two or whatever. And if you're a vulnerable population, you may have more time. Whenever we have deadlines and timeframes, it's great to then say, okay, what do I want to accomplish? What do I want to do in this period of time? And one of the things that I've been doing is I've been listening to Masterclass. And just, if you guys haven't had that, that's so much good energy in. And this weekend, if you are a mother or you're giving it for Mother's Day, you can get like $30 off. And I was listening to Bob Iger from Disney. And because we know some people, and there's some KW people within Disney that are connected to Disney. And so I've watched and seen how things have gone. But Bob Iger was so amazing because he said, you have to inspire people. And you cannot inspire anyone with pessimism. You have to be optimistic. And he said, in order for everything to grow at Disney, and they are a creative industry, that creativity is constantly in their mind. But I think for everybody, creativity exists in some way, shape, or form in your business. And it's really to be creative and optimistic, then it inspires many more other people. And it just keeps moving forward and growing and changing. And so we'll be adapting. That's our ability to adapt. We will continue to adapt if you are able to be inspirational and optimistic.
Well, and going back, if you're pessimistic, I just flash back to that cell. You know, all we are is a collection of cells. If you're pessimistic, you're just going to stay the exact same way you are.
Same exact place. And you're holding on to stuff.
And we can't afford to do that as everything exterior is changing. We got to be able to change with it.
Yeah, and I think if I had a thought, I would, well, the number one thing I hear people ask for all the time is time. The number one reason people don't accomplish things is time. I hear time. If I just had time, if I had more time, all this stuff. So here we are in the world where it doesn't necessarily mean that we've been given more time, but our time definitely has changed. And whenever we have crisis and change, that's a great opportunity for us to change. And so when all of this happened, I said, wow, this is the only time in my life that the world has basically slowed down.
Yeah.
And all that busy stuff that we were doing, it gives us an opportunity to say, okay, what's really valuable? What do I really want to continue doing? What do I want to change? And I want to do things differently. And we have crises all the time in different areas, and everyone who's been through their own personal crises, you understand that there are so many gifts in that crisis. And that's why I loved when I was a therapist, I loved adolescents because they're in constant crisis. For everybody who has an adolescent, they totally know this, that everything is dramatic.
Sounds like realtors too.
Yes. Well, and the interesting thing about realtors is that I believe, and I've said this for a long time, that you all aren't necessarily trained for what the level of intervention that you work with clients, that you are going into people's most personal thing. I always tell people that when my kind of work is like people standing naked in front of me. And when I have trainers that work for me, I'm like, that's how respectful you need to be of someone's personal body. Well, realtors are working with homes, which is just an extension of their personal body and their family relationship and their dynamic. And you get handed so much stuff that is not based in buying and selling houses. It is managing people. And I feel like one of the greatest things for realtors is to be curious in order to quickly learn all the things about people that maybe nobody ever taught you. And so seasoned real estate agents really start to become very much the mental health professional type people, because you're dealing with the most personal issues. You're dealing with their home and their finances, and you get to see all of that. And then you are seeing the relationships and all kinds of stuff that you have to navigate and dance with. And so I think for real estate agents, if you want to really truly be successful, if you acknowledge, wow, I have learned a lot in doing this, and being open to continue to learn, because people are needing that kind of stability and leadership. And oftentimes a real estate agent shows up as a professional that is the guiding force during that time. That is, maybe it's a divorce, maybe it's an economic shift, maybe it's a new member of the family. Those are all really big things. And there's the real estate agent holding hands with the person.
Okay, shift a gear and go, let's talk about what we talked about yesterday, because when I jumped on the call, I mean, it literally was half a second. You said, you didn't say what's wrong, but essentially you said, what's wrong? Just from one breath you heard out of me. And I couldn't really put my finger on, it's just all the layers, right? By the way, today's better. And it's better because of the two kind of techniques you gave us, which was body check and then mental check.
Mental stuff. Yeah. So that, again, that's a mental health thing that I learned a long time ago. And I thought everybody should do this all the time. And it's not just mental health people, but it's body status exam and mental status exam. And I recorded that program, and I'll put on my YouTube channel about that, so you can get even more details about that. But
awesome.
What you're doing, what I noticed with Ashley, and this is, again, I've been a coach for a really long time, and I noticed with Ashley that she showed up on the Zoom and I could tell she really wasn't breathing, and her body posture was a little bit forward. And so I'm trained to look for that. But the number one thing you want to learn how to do is you want to learn how to do that for yourself. So you are the manager of this body, and you want to know what's going on. And when we have a really strong alignment and connection, we're more powerful, we have more energy, we can accomplish more, we're stronger, everything works better. So you want to do these two techniques. And I'm going to start with mental status exam and then body status exam. So mental status exam, you go MSE. And mental status exam is checking in with, what am I thinking? So let's say, for example, that you see, because I always love this, that I watch people, they look at their phone and then they look down and you see something change in that person. So that could be a great time to go mental status exam. What am I thinking? I don't want to talk to this person. She's exhausting. She's going to be complaining about the inspector that came over that didn't wear the booties the whole time. I don't. So you check in with your mental status exam and say, what am I really thinking? All right, I'm thinking that's going to take a lot of energy, And just by assessing, then you can determine what to do. And you get to that option and optimistic place. Body status exam is the other indicator, because these are two gauges that are going on that you want to be able to read. Body status exam, you just scan head to toe and you say, what is my body doing right now? So a lot of times when somebody sees that message, that's when you see that, and they can feel my shoulders came up, my stomach sort of tightened, I am not breathing the same way I was before. There's something about that client. And I fired 2 clients my entire career. And the first one was because of a body status exam that I did. I got a phone call from him. He and his wife kept divorcing, getting back together, divorcing, getting back together, divorcing, getting back together. And I got a call from them, and today they were getting back together. And I started to realize that I wasn't breathing well, and I was tensing up. And in just that moment, I said, you know what, I'm not going to be able to work with you anymore. I'm going to work with your wife. She was my first client, and I will find you somebody else. And because I realized that was not making me work. And so when you do that body status exam, it's so much information. It gives you so much information. So if you were walking in a room and you heard and saw the news, and you turn and you see something, and you see something horrific, people do 2 things. They cover their mouth and they go, oh my gosh, or they cover their heart and go, oh my gosh. Those 2 things tell you right there that you are actually losing life force, and your body is actually trying to prevent it. Shock makes us do that, where we go, oh my God, here, I'm leaving all my life force right here. Now I'm not breathing anymore. And everything is about this moment. And so when you do that body status exam, you're like, okay, wait a minute. I need to not pay attention to that. That didn't happen to me. This is where I am right now. I'm okay. Breathe. And by doing that, all of a sudden you have control.
So to get specific, because you did yesterday, when you say head to toe, what do you mean? And what I did is I actually put it in my calendar. So I started that way today.
Yeah. So to learn how to do this, I do this instinctively now because it's a habit. But to learn how to do this, you typically want to create a system where you are checking in mentally and physically. So, and I always show that MSE, BSE, body status exam, mental status exam. If you've read my book, I use that in every chapter, every chapter. So when you're doing that body status exam, you might put it on the hour to do that, just to check in right now as things are going along, that you do body status exam, mental status exam. Then you might maybe say, I want to have awareness about when I'm going into a tough situation. So it's not on the hour, but I'm like, I want to check in, just like you check for women, you check your lipstick and your hair, check your body. Just say, where am I? I don't know what guys check. I don't know that they check anything before they go into an appointment.
Well, that was a grand generalization, because I don't check my hair and I don't wear lipstick.
Yeah, and I was going to say, but
zipper, buttons, maybe.
Your buttons are done. There's something that you do. You check to make sure your phone's turned off. Ooh, that's one that goes for everybody. And so you check something. When you're doing that, plant the seed that you're going to do a quick body status exam, mental status exam. So body status, I always go from head to toe. And when I'm teaching or presenting in a group, I'll bring you from toe to head. And I do that because I feel like feeling your feet on the ground, oftentimes for people who don't practice this all the time, you need to know where you are. And feeling your feet, like right now, everybody that's on this, if you just say, feel your feet on the ground, touching the floor, do you feel your toes? Do you feel your feet touching the ground? And when people do that, your energy goes from up here to your whole body. And if you really need to be grounded, send that energy all the way to the center of the earth. And then you're like, boom, I am grounded. And so then you're like, okay, I'm grounded. Am I breathing? Well, interesting, the more stressful or tense, our breath gets shallower. and our muscles become hypertonic or tense. So when we get more tension, we're not actually sending blood flow and oxygenation to our muscles. We are doing this. So we're not breathing in our whole body, and our body is getting tense. And then you work up to your neck and shoulders, and your shoulders are getting higher. Your posture is changing. Your neck is getting more tense, and your head might be even out because you're thinking. When you're thinking about something to do, oftentimes our head goes forward, so we go forward thinking, I'm doing this. So just by doing that body status exam, it's like, okay, breathe, shoulders are relaxed, chest is up, so I can actually feel my lungs touch the back of my chair, go wide, expand. I can feel my legs, I feel my muscles. Okay, my head is balanced on top of my spine. I'm good. That is a super powerful position to come from versus the other. And you guys see those people move around and sometimes are those people. And that person doesn't equate confidence. That person actually equates, ooh, they got stuff going on there. They're challenge, problem, frenetic, busy. As soon as you get grounded, you walk in, you're a force. And if you're on the phone, you can do the same thing. You just get grounded in between each call. So if you're an agent right now, you're doing a lot more things virtually. But even right now, people are afraid. People are afraid. They're being programmed to be afraid, and there's situations that they've never been in before, so they're fearful. And so being a force that is grounded and strong and breathing and powerful, you become the person that they say, you're my professional, I rely on you, you're my leader. And so showing up any other way makes it difficult for you to actually be the person that will be the expert and that they will hear all the other things that you're telling them. And that body status exam, once you master body status exam and mental status exam for yourself, you really begin to notice other people. And so that's when you really look and see, and maybe it's just on the phone, because I work with clients on the phone all the time. And as a matter of fact, I ask people, do you want to go to Zoom for this? No, I don't want any more Zoom. So I work with people on the phone, but I can hear their breath. I can hear the energy they bring to the call. And so you can do the same thing when you're talking to clients, is to really pay attention. You get really grounded with yourself, and then you can really hear where they're at. And the number one thing, if you want to know how to help anybody, the first thing is to validate them, because people want validation about their feelings. So if somebody is a soccer mom that is running around crazy and you need her to DocuSign something, and she calls you and she says, oh my gosh, I just got out of kids soccer, the very first thing you should do is be with her. Get to the place, get grounded yourself, and then say, I hear you've had a really frenetic day. I don't want to make this any more difficult, so I want to ask you, what would be the easiest way for us to get the DocuSign done so that it can be done within an hour? Just by validating it, she will be able to hear what you said. Because if you didn't validate it, she is still in her world, and she will be going around until someone says, oh my God, you've had a tough day. Let me do something to make you have a more relaxing day. And once you do that, then somebody's ears are open. Until that point, yeah.
It's all about opening or staying closed, isn't that
right? Right. So it goes back. So that's that if there was, we should have somebody who is an illustrator. Who is an illustrator? Send me somebody who's an illustrator, because I have so many cool things that I need illustrating. But that's exactly it, is because people are walking around closed until you are there to do something to allow them to be open also. And that's why I always, and you know, with everybody that's ever been through Bold and MAPS and has MAPS coaches and everything else, you ask great questions. The great questions are to validate what is going on with the person. It gets you to stop and you go, okay, let's validate you. And if you don't get validation, what you find is people act out. And so the client who is calling you 65 times during the day, or is managed to send you a really long email, they are telling you over and over and over and over and over again, you're not validating me. If you do all the right things, there will still be a small percentage of people that are just mentally ill, okay? That's just who they are. You will know that because you have done all the things and they still are going to behave in a way that you go, okay, well, I've done everything I can do. So
crazy.
Yeah, and so, yeah, and it just, and because also as, if you are not mentally ill, you constantly put a filter of, this is what you would do if everything's functioning. And that doesn't work in that situation either. So you really have to get to the point of saying, I have asked a lot of questions, I have validated, I've done this, and none of this works. Okay, and now you at least understand what you're working with.
Right. That's awesome, Nina. And you just, for what you just went through and describing that to me, to us, as far as observing other people, that's your superpower. Where you enter a room, you always come in with a groundedness and an openness that creates more openness.
Well,
really
thank you. I believe that empathy is something that some people have wired, that they have more feelers, and other people have better sight and better sound, and they can see certain things, and like, you know, Chris understands strategies and all that kind of stuff that I just go, I don't know what you're talking about. But empathy is one of those things that is a practice. And so by validating people, you create the practice where you get a chance to, because you're reading information. I don't know the exact percentage, but I think our communication, if anybody knows the numbers, the verbal
7%
communication
is tonality.
Yeah.
7 is tonality. 12 is words, and the rest is body language.
And the rest is body language. So what you do by validating somebody is you actually are giving yourself your library of resources based on what you are seeing in body language. So a lot of times when I'm working with clients and I help them understand this, you may think that when I'm doing this, that I'm angry. But if you validate it, you realize, oh, okay, for her, and there's a difference there. She's moving forward. She's just super focused. She's not angry about anything, but you have to ask the question to validate that. And so when you ask those questions, you get validation, and then your empathy actually begins to increase because you are able to read gauges that you sort of knew on your gut, but a lot of times you may have put them as something else. Oh, I thought that when people are talking loud, that they're angry. Well, actually, this person talks loud when they're really excited. And, you know, so you only know that. And then you start to become this, you've got this library of being able to read people, which makes you have empathy for them because you understand them more. And it's interesting too, because that's one of the things, if you listen to leadership over and over and over again, people are constantly trying to call it something else. It's just empathy, okay? And it's not a weakness to have empathy or sympathy, but it's actually, like you said, a superpower. And they call it all these other things. I just call it what it is, which is, I can understand what you're feeling.
Well, I want to have a phone call with you privately because I did a tremendous amount of research on this last year. I'm actually working on a book around empathy, and there's some cool science I want to talk to you about.
Yeah, and you know what's really cool, in order to be empathic or have empathy for someone, you do not need to join in their scenario. It's always good. Yeah. And so I always describe it to clients as, you're a lifeguard and you're trained as a lifeguard and someone is drowning. And the first thing you do out of impulse, not out of training, is that you jump in there with them. You didn't bring all your stuff. You just went right in there and you're like, yes, they actually are drowning. And now I'm drowning with them. I know what it feels like to drown. We're all drowning together now. I'm here with you. I totally empathize. Well, yeah, but you're all drowning. So you do that. Now, some people do it a lot. And then they keep doing it because they're like, look, I'm showing empathy. And you're like, you do not need to join them. You need to say, I see what you're doing. I validate it. And I have all these tools. I'm going to stand here in this safe place. I'm going to talk to you and I'm going to give you this ring to grab onto, and I'm going to coach you to pull you over here to safety, and we'll both be on the shore. I can save a whole lot more people doing that than I can jumping in and drowning with them. And so when you learn about empathy, it doesn't make you soft. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you actually strong and strategic and be able to intervene with many more people. And so that allows you to have the energy at the end of the day where you can talk to people about all kinds of things and you don't lose any energy. You actually are great and you still have energy by the end of the day.
So we are getting close to time here. What can we do for you? Number one, what's next for you? What do you have kind of on your plate? And what can we as a collective do for you?
So I already threw one out. I really need an illustrator because I
wrote that down.
Yeah. So I have some things, and I have a lot of projects that always are in the works, but don't have the attention that they need. And so there's a couple of things that I have going that I really would like a really great illustrator. I need a social media person right now. And everybody who knows, right now I'm at my house and I don't have a person who's doing social media for me. So I'm posting crazy and I don't know how to work Zoom, and I've got all these things. And
you're doing a lot better than you were just a couple weeks ago.
A couple weeks ago, my learning curve is going along there, but I have a podcast that I've got amazing clients. I've worked with all kinds of amazing clients and people that are super well known that everybody would love to hear from, and people that are not well known that have the most amazing gifts. And so I have a podcast that I need to put in place. And again, it's a matter of some of those detail things. So I would love to find somebody who actually I could do it and they handle everything else with that. So those are my two asks, if anybody knows anybody. Thank you, Ashley, too, for that.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Questions, thoughts? I know there's chat stuff going on, but I never open it up because then I can't see your faces. So
I've been watching it. There's not really any questions in there.
Are we having validation?
There's lots of love in there for you.
Oh, good. Good. And I hope a lot of validation because, and that's the other thing is that this is the one time that we have way more similarities than differences, way more around the entire world.
Yep.
That there are people that are much more similar than different. And I think that similarities are the things you just need to look for them and then find them. And that is the thing that makes us be able to be united, stronger, and be able to accomplish anything. So
yeah, that's one of the gifts of this pause is I think to show us how much we actually do need each other and to show how connected we truly are because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we are, and you described this about cells. And again, everybody is this environment of all these cells, and then we're all connected. So we're a microorganism of this macroorganism we call the world. And whenever I see people doing stuff that is harmful to others, I always think it's like stubbing your toe on purpose. And it doesn't do anything beneficial to the entire body. It's just something you just caused and made happen. And not good for everybody. So I don't like this stubbing toe on purpose.
All right.
Anything
Well,
else?
thank you, thank you, thank you.
You are very welcome. You're
I'll
very
make sure
welcome.
you get a link to this too.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Because
And
again, social media wise, I didn't post about this, which I apologize for not doing, but I love everybody that's been on here. It's wonderful to see your faces. And for everybody that's still on here, I just want to give you one bit of information. You are leaders because you are in a position where you are learning and you are sharing. And so when you are here on these kinds of calls, it is because we are all taking great collective information and then we're meant to go out and share. And so thank you guys for all being on this call, for being the leaders that you are, for in your family, in your communities, in your offices, everywhere, because this kind of teaching is what's shared around the world. And so love that you guys are all here, and thank you for listening and being here. And I've got
sharing with them.
You are very welcome. And I've got a YouTube channel for because I've been doing the Energy Advantage 2020 chats, and then I do a recorded of the topics if you want more. And so I'll post the last 2, but I think there's 7. And
Do you know the name of your YouTube channel?
It's Nina Rowan Heller, I think. I'm pretty sure.
We'll find it and we'll post it too.
So then you can watch those videos. What I love more than anything is I hear from somebody that they send it to their parents and they're so excited that their parents listen to it. And I'm like, yes, because it's not, if you have any family member that you want them to understand something, oftentimes it
Can't
needs
come
to
from you.
somebody else. Yeah. So, and speaking of, here, come do the drive-by. You didn't do a drive-by at all.
As long as he's dressed, we're good.
So yeah, he's got shorts on though, his work shorts.
I miss
you
you guys.
So you can say hi to everybody. Yes, you can wave to everybody collectively.
Okay, hello everybody.
You were really good too, that you didn't come in and crash.
I didn't make noise.
He makes noise, and so.
This is my office.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
go rearrange
he's the
the
guy-
refrigerator, Nina.
Yes.
I make so many visits to the refrigerator. I used to never make any. Now I go there multiple times a day.
Yeah, and I have to tell
usually
him.
walk away empty-handed.
Yeah, I tell him, I'm like, I hear you're in the refrigerator, and then he goes, scurries off.
So funny.
All right, well, thank you guys for everything. Ashley, anything else that I can do?
We're
Everybody.
good for today. I'll see you next Tuesday for sure.
Okay, yeah, and for anybody that wants to do that call, it's 12:30 on Tuesdays. You can join.
12:30 Central.
12,
So
I'm sorry,
10:30
thank you. You see, I've been in one time zone so long. 12:30 Central, and you can find all the link and stuff on Facebook. So love you guys, big virtual hugs. Really, you can feel them.
Yep,
And thank you so much for being on. Yay, yay, Alini, it's so good to see you. Yay, it's wonderful seeing everybody. Thank you, Ashley, for this. This is great.
Thank you.
Everybody take care.
When we get unleashed from home, let me know when you guys are back in San Diego.
Will do. Will do. Miss you. Miss you.
Miss
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye.